This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. Your last working day of your career before you retire is a pretty huge day. On the podcast today, I chat with Dr.Gerry Waldron, Assistant Director of Public Health in Northern Ireland, on his very last day. Instead of being a nice, soft, gentle end to his career, he was instead thrown into the COVID storm over the last 2 years as he and his colleagues played a pivotal role in managing the pandemic in Northern Ireland. We chatted about his career, moving to the north during the height of the Troubles, coping with a huge personal bump in the road, and of course COVID, and where the whole thing is bringing us. Let's hear from Gerry on his last day. Dr. Gerry Waldron, a big welcome back to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Greg. Thanks very much.
So
good to see you again.
And likewise. There's something a little bit special about today, to the best of my information. Can you inform my listeners what the hell is going on?
What the hell is going on, Greg, is this is my final working day with the Public Health Agency. I have tons of leave to take, a couple of months actually, because I've got very little in the last couple of years. So I'm finishing up today at work. I will be officially retiring at the end of January. So it's a kind of bittersweet day. I'm be saying goodbye to colleagues I've worked with, some for a long period of time, others for relatively short. But the past couple of years has been particularly brutal, and we've gone through an awful lot together. It's very sad to leave them behind, but there's a time to go, and this is it. So I'm very, she's talking about winning happy. I'm winning happy today.
And tell me, are you even able to get your head around the idea? Because we spend a lifetime working, and you've been working from what age?
I like to think, Greg, when I started picking up glasses in the railway bar in Ballybunion at the age of 5.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
I've been working since then, and I'm not going to stop. It's just, I'll be doing other things. It's just another chapter in life, and you just go on. You do things. I'm very, very grateful for the career I've had. It's I have the real privilege of knowing that I was in a job that I love doing. And I don't know how many people get to say that at the end of the day, but I've been very, very lucky in that. And it's time to finish. All good things come to an end, but it's not. They're.
And for the listener, Gerry, can you take them from the 5-year-old who's in the railway bar picking up glasses, and including where that actually was, because a lot of people have no idea where the railway bar is, and how you got to today? Could you quickly take me through that journey? And
oh gosh, yeah. My parents spent a lifetime in hospitality and catering, and that was one of the first places that they had. They had another place before that. We won't get into that. We were in Tralee in a place called the Central Grill, and Ballybunion is a quaint little seaside town in Kerry. I don't know how quaint it is, but it was completely dead during the winter months and hiving in the summer months before people jetted off to Spain and places like that. People came to Ballybunion. There was an old joke that said some elderly lady was filling in a census form, and she came to the title, said sex, and she wrote down once in Ballybunion. that was Ballybunion for you. But we moved to Tralee and subsequently with various things in Tralee, and I was working in Tralee. Kind of my adolescence was in Tralee, working in the restaurant and working really hard in the restaurant. And I really resented the fact that at the time when everybody was having fun and enjoying themselves, I was working we had the festival of Kerry every year. It meant a great crack for everybody else. What it meant to me was we were working from 9 o'clock in the morning until probably 2 or 3 in the following morning, just catering to the needs of the hungry revelers. And I said there must be a quieter life than this. So I went into medicine. The very first job that I'm one of the only people that said that alive, I think, that went into medicine for a quiet life.
Yeah.
And
it's unusual, Gerry, because your father started off on that path, didn't he?
He did, yes. He was too clever for his own good. He started very young, and when things got a little bit rough, he decided he was going back to the family business rather than staying in medicine. But he enjoyed life as well, and the path we never, we all follow strange paths in life, and we don't always end up where we think we'll end up, but sometimes it's a better place.
Did you ever chat to him about that and how decision
very
process?
Rarely.
Yeah.
I just the once he wasn't really very forthcoming about his life. It was just when I decided I was going to medical school in Galway, which coincidentally was the medical school he went to, and the day, I think it was 19 or something like that, the day I left to get on the train to take me to Galway, he gave me 20 quid, I think, which is a lot of money in that day, to put it into my hand, and he said, "Don't make the same mistakes I made." And that was the only conversation we ever had about it. It was weird.
But that's nearly a generational thing, though, isn't it? That kind of relationship children had with their fathers in particular.
Yeah.
Did you know what he meant when he said that to you?
I did, yeah, because I'd heard the stories from other people.
Yeah. The fact that it was an entrepreneurial family, Gerry, does that affect you in a way? Does that instill something different in you?
I don't know. I mean, I must say there are medical families and people whose parents have been medical, and I wasn't one of those. And I don't know whether it made any difference, but it gave me a different point of view, I suppose, that I wasn't just brought up in the world of medicine, and I had some other experiences to take into it, and it helped. I mean, I suppose the whole business of I was used to dealing with people, which was very good when you're actually on the wards and trying to talk to patients who are kind of worried about. I mean, and anyone ending up in a hospital bed is going to be worried about where they were. And I hope I was able to bring that sort of, I don't know, customer service, for want of a better word, to the bedside. And I think later on when I left patients behind when I was in public health, but I had to deal with people and deal with the public. And I think that experience probably has stood me in good stead over the years. I hope it has. It's certainly, I think public health was something that, and I say to people coming into public health, and it's very rarely a first career for people. People have done things beforehand. Let me just say to them, whatever you've done, whether it's on the medical field or anything else, everything you've done before you come in here, you can use it to good effect. Absolutely everything. And I think it's a great career from that point of view, that people will have other life experiences that they can bring to it and benefit us all, really.
And that day when you took the 20 quid off your dad.
And the 20 quid.
and kind of leaving the train station in Kerry, you pretty much knew, I'm guessing, that you wouldn't be back to Kerry, that whatever work you were going to do was going to bring you away. So that was kind of leaving home as well as starting a career.
Yes, it probably was, though I was still coming back every summer to work in the restaurant and right through the festival and everything else. So, it wasn't really leaving home as such, but yes, I suppose when I did think of it, and that's the thing about it, it may be less so now, people have more choices, but at the time, when you're embarking on a career like medicine, you just basically said, you go where the jobs are.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I ended up started off in Northern Ireland, went to Scotland, went to England, then back up to Scotland again, then back to England again, and then finally back to Northern Ireland. And I did have a kind of short stint in the health service in the Republic of Ireland, in Limerick, in psychiatry. I didn't stay there very long.
They drove you mad.
Hightailing it over the border again as quick as I could after that. But it's where the opportunities come up, you know. I think if you want to develop your career, you're prepared to travel. And I didn't travel as far as other people. Other people have gone to Australia, to the States or whatever, and they've come back from there. I never went that far. I went as far as Scotland, I suppose, the furthest away I went. I remember it's a funny story really on that, because when I was in Scotland, I was training, my last training job before I took up a consultant post. But my trainer, who was from Edinburgh, but working in Dumfries, where I was doing the training, and we were having a chat one day, and he said, "Gerry, did you ever think about working abroad?" And I said, "Jim, I am working abroad." He just hadn't gotten down. He says, "This fellow's Irish. He's a foreigner too." Never, the penny didn't drop with him.
In a way, that's kind of good, because they consider you to be one of them, I presume.
Yeah, I suppose.
So what roles did you have along the way in those different locations?
Well, I was thinking today, the meeting just had where people kind of had a Zoom call as well, a kind of odd sort of thing, this when leaving dues or whatever, to mark the last day, and colleagues from work came on, and I had to say a couple of words, and I just said that it kind of struck me that I've got into what I'm doing by accident, by a number of accidents. I got my first job in Northern Ireland by accident, basically. I was looking for a job somewhere else, and a friend was working in Enniskillen, and he said, he just got married recently, and being a kind of impoverished medical student, I hadn't bought him a present. So I said, I'll buy him a present anyway, and I'll ring him up and go on. And he said, "Oh, come on and stay with us for a couple of days." So I rocked up, and he said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for a job." And he said, "Oh, there's a job here. Would you be interested in working here?" And I said, "Well, okay, I'll try." And he kind of, that next morning, I was getting out of bed, and the phone rang. He phoned me, and he said, "Have you got your suit with you?" And I said, "Yeah, you've got an interview in an hour." I just kind of, that's what got into. I was in Enniskillen for 2 years, kind of what used to be called the intern year, but it was a house officer year, 6 months medicine, 6 months surgery. I did a year's medicine after that, but I was always interested in doing psychiatry, and I thought, I got married in 82 while we were still in Enniskillen, and I kind of said to Mary, "We'll come back down south." And an opportunity came up down south. I was applying for jobs down south. That's when I took the job in Limerick. But I didn't stay there long. I stayed in psychiatry for a little bit longer. I did psychiatry in Scotland, but it wasn't the career for me, really. I enjoyed it, but there was something missing. And then an accident happened. Mary was working in an education centre, in community education centre in Dumfries, and she walked out and she heard someone with an Irish accent. And it turned out it was someone whose husband was public health consultant in Dumfries, and we got to meet them socially. And Dave Breen, whose name was, he was from Castle Island originally, and he said, "Would you ever think of a job in public health?" And I said, "No, I hadn't actually, but the more I looked into it, the more I wanted it." I said, "Well, I'll go wherever I need to go because I'm really interested in doing this." So I applied in various places. And wouldn't you know, the place that took me on was in London. So it was a huge wrench coming away from Scotland. We'd been there for about 5 or 6 years into going down to, I moved from psychiatry, but I did a year of GP training, which again was helpful, but I didn't really see myself as a GP either. But I went down to London, to Southwest Thames and Croydon, and the very second I went in there and sat down and looked at the work, I said, "Amazing." And just this kind of epiphany, and said, I actually belong here. This is what I was meant to be doing. And that's never left me. And it was just amazing. So I was there in London for about 5 years. I did a final year of training in Scotland, went back to Scotland. We had a house before we moved down, and we hadn't sold it, so we went back to live in our house after owning it for 5 years. Not crazy, but then same as everything, you go for the opportunities. I got an opportunity when I was ready to be a consultant. I said I'll look for consultant jobs everywhere. The one that came up was in the West Midlands in England, in Solihull, very posh part of the part beside Birmingham, and they're not Birmingham. So I was there for nearly 2 years, and John started going to school. Our son started going to school, and this is the ridiculous thing. The way I ended up in Northern Ireland was John came home from school one day with a very pronounced Brummie accent. Now, there's nothing wrong with Brummie accents, but it just struck me. My son isn't going to be Irish. And I said, God. And, I was happy to have stayed in Solihull. It was great. The work, I enjoyed the work. It was fine. And we could have stayed there. We could have stayed living in Birmingham across the border, because we couldn't really afford the property in Solihull. But as it happened, a couple of ads came up, one from Northern Ireland, and I went for that job and I got it, and I've been here ever since. So,
and was it your intention that Northern Ireland would be a stepping stone to the south, did you think? Or
not really, because I had done a couple of interviews in the south before then, and I hadn't got them. And I mean, there was an exciting time in the south, because they were developing public health as a specialty, as a profession. But it took them a while to do it. And no harm to my colleagues in South. They've done some great work, but really they've just about struggled to get consultant status. They've got it now, but they were really fighting for it, and they were, and I'm glad I didn't have to do that as well as everything I did. I came into a system where public health was very well established, and I knew what it was about, and I was able to contribute to it, rather than getting into struggles about kind of semi-political things about what we should be and what we shouldn't. I mean, that's important too, because I think the profession has to be valued. And, I'm glad to see that in the South now it appears to be heading in that direction, which is good news.
So does that mean, Gerry, that, in how they perceive the different roles, if you're a medical practitioner, you're considered more highly than the teams that look after everything, the kind of umbrella kind of functions and roles? Because effectively that's what public health is, isn't it?
Yeah. Public health is the simple way that I describe it, I think, is that where other doctors and medical teams or whatever, they deal with patients, they deal with individuals, and we deal with populations. So in the same way as other teams would treat an individual, we treat the population. We diagnose the problems. What are the key issues there? And we propose ways of treatment and treating the problem. And, in a lot of ways, like patients, like when a GP tells someone to stop smoking because it'll kill them, we can make recommendations as well for the population that people don't take any notice of. And, that's it. That's life. And that's what we expect to happen with it.
Yeah. So instead of putting the thermometer into your mouth and telling you to say, you have your own metrics going whereby you look at the collective. So you have your own, you have your own thermometer and your own way of listening to people saying,
it's called epidemiology.
Yeah.
And it's a science, and it's the study of disease in populations. And it's one of the things that we use to find out what's going on in a particular area, what the key problems are, what the key health problems are, why they might be there, and what needs to be done to sort it out.
Yeah, so we all know about public health now since Mr. COVID knocked on the door and introduced himself to everyone.
It's one of the, terrible to say it's a benefit of COVID, but people now know what public health is about. They know what epidemiology is about, even better.
Yeah, absolutely. We're being reminded.
And everybody's an epidemiologist now.
Absolutely, yeah. We're being reminded every single day. But before we go there a little bit, just in terms of life and living and everything else, moving to Northern Ireland back in the day, like what year was it when you moved to Northern Ireland?
It was 1981. Yeah, that was the height of the troubles. It was just after the hunger strike. In fact, it was during the hunger strike, if I remember correctly. It was still kind of playing out when I started working there. It was in Enniskillen, which had the biggest. The police training college was there. I was in the residence, and the hospital was just across the river from it. Every morning I was woken up to the sound of gunfire, but it was from the practice range on the police college, not from the other things. But I did see some pretty horrific things in my first 6 months in surgery. Obviously, there was a major atrocity in Enniskillen after I left it, which was shocking to me because I knew the place so well, having spent 2 years there. And of course, I spent a year in Oma doing psychiatry later on. And, when the Oma atrocity happened as well, it hit home a lot to me because, again, I knew exactly where it happened and I knew where the people are concerned. So it was very, very sad, really, and we were in a terrible place, and things have got so much better since then, despite all the trouble that's going on. And I think it would be absolutely appalling and shocking if we were ever to get back to go back to that stage again. And that's the last thing I'd want to see happen.
And what you hear from people who come from those places, it's my home.
You mean in terms of people who come from the south?
But no, people who live in Oma, who live in Enniskillen, who live in Derry. What you typically hear from them is that, well, this is my home. It's not very nice, but it's my home and it's what I'm used to. And that's obviously right. Some people have left Northern Ireland. As we know, down south, you come across a lot of them because they just got out.
Yeah.
But to voluntarily go in the other direction at a time of trouble, were you very conscious of keeping your mouth shut and keeping your head down?
Not really, funny enough. It was strange, but I think you're different when you're coming from the south there. You're kind of perceived differently. You're not perceived as, well, of course, people make the assumptions about which community you're from. And it's something that you can't hide because the minute you open your mouth, it's your accent.
Yeah.
There's a very good Bosnian poet we met a while back. His name was Goran Simic, and he has a poem about his accent, and it starts off the line, "In my accent, you can hear my past," which is a brilliant line.
Yeah.
But and that's it. People know who I am, and they know what I suppose people are more careful about around me than I am about around them.
Did you ever suffer at the hands of that? Were you ever treated badly, or was it ever a negative?
Absolutely not. Never. Now, that may very well be on the basis of me being middle class, and middle class people live in a certain milieu which other people don't, and it's a different sort of thing. And you don't talk about certain subjects in mixed company. At least that was the original, the way things were when the first time I moved up. It's very different in the sense that I've been, since we came back in 97, I've had conversations with people from all sides of the community that I wouldn't have dreamed possible when I started off. So things have changed in that respect. But again, we're talking about in the situations we move in, we're talking about people of like minds, even though we might differ politically or whatever, but we can have reasonable conversations about the differences, which would not have been possible many years ago.
Yeah. Are you hopeful and optimistic?
Well, I was until Brexit.
Yeah.
I think Brexit has put a complete kibosh on the whole thing. And not the doing or the fault of anyone here. It's the other island. That's the problem. But it's caused such division. It's unbelievable. I don't think we'll ever go back, and hope we never go back to the way things were. But this has not helped. Nobody really worried about what was going on while we were all part of Europe. It didn't really matter. But this thing has just heightened the division on the island and the division between communities in this part of it. And it's very depressing. Really do.
Yeah. There's no solution to it, Ger, from the looks of it.
I don't know. better minds than mine, Greg, I think, anyway. We'll need to sort it out.
It's the ultimate catch-22, isn't it? You borders here and borders there, and no one's happy with any of them.
Yeah.
And anytime we've gone up north, it feels so different. And I know what you were saying is that, it was good to kind of get back to Ireland. And I know once we head up that road in the car, the minute you go across the border, it certainly doesn't feel like Ireland anymore.
That's interesting.
Not at all, no.
Yeah.
I went up there for the marches 2 years ago, and you were saying, what are you doing? Everyone else gets out.
Yeah.
But even outside of that, I must say I feel uncomfortable, and I know we've visited yourself and Ballymena. That was for a significant birthday, wasn't it? And it felt uncomfortable, and maybe that's as much in my head as anything. But you know yourself, you're driving through the towns and you've got, the British flags everywhere, and so the Irish flags some places. It's really a shame, because even down south, if you have an Irish flag hanging from your window and there isn't an Irish match on, well, that means you're IRA, you're Republican. And it's terrible that our flag has been kind of hijacked by all of that in a weird way.
Yeah.
But anyway, you had a big bump along the way as well, didn't you? Because you mentioned your son, John. But of course, that came with equal sorrow as well.
It did, yeah.
That was when you were living in England, wasn't it?
We were in Brighton, and Mary was pregnant, and it took us a long time because we needed assistance. It was IVF, and we had twins, which was great because we were expecting twins, because I thought, we've gone through this guts of 10 years really, and we'd have an instant family, if you like, hoping for one of each, and that would be sorted it out. But everything was going really, really well till the last day. And Mary woke up in the morning and the waters had broken. We went straight down to the maternity. It had all practiced and planned and everything. And they said, "Oh yeah, you'll be delivered today, no doubt about that." And they started doing the ultrasound, which we were normal sort of things happening. And they could only find one heartbeat. And I kind of felt a bit, thought, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" But we twin two, as we called them, had always been difficult to get the heartbeat, so we didn't think much. Then they brought in a bigger machine and a better technician, and I was able to see the ultrasound, and I saw the twin two's heart, which wasn't beating, and that was the worst day of my life. It was the best day of my life as well. But,
and that made it so difficult, didn't it? Because and it's funny, Gerry, I haven't been in your life for so long. Well, it's been 20 years since I've known you. And it's kind of a funny thing, because I always sense that sorrow around you and Mary. And I was kind of felt for John a little bit, because that must have been difficult for him as well, because I'm sure he sensed that sorrow cloud, and difficult for you handling all of that. But of course, huge tragedy, and you go back to work. And when you look back in your career, was that a big weight on your ankles trying to get through days with that sorrow? Because we all have to present ourselves at work and professional and focused and all that kind of thing. But when you look around work and all of your colleagues, everyone is going through something at that time, no matter what it is. But was that a really difficult time for you to keep the show on the road?
People were very good, Greg, and that's kind of comes to mind a number of tragedies. When we're in Scotland, Mary's mother developed cancer, and we had to take time off, and people were very good about that. And she died a few years later, and it was a difficult time. That was a difficult time losing Brandon, really was. But people were very, very good, and I just found, whenever there's been a tragedy in my life, and there've been a few of them, what really struck me is how kind people are at the time. And it really, it's if ever you needed faith in humanity, I think that gives you it. So you get through it, and say you never get over it. You never ever get over it, but you just learn to live with it.
Yeah.
And that's life. Everybody, show me a family that hasn't got a tragedy attached to it, and they're not alive.
Yeah, well,
it's part of
the people that live on inside you, and I think you owe to them to keep living and do what you can while you're here. Mm-hmm. So back to Northern Ireland, we're doing well. You're busy. Your career is flying, and you're, the years are creeping up. You're up and down the country supporting Kerry. Lots of good days and a few bad ones, but more bad ones recently than good ones.
I won't talk about that, Greg.
And from a career point of view, you're starting to come around the last bend. You're probably looking at the clock, and there's a year or two left. And you're probably, this will be nice and easy now. I'll go out in cruise control, and then COVID happened. Jesus Almighty, what has that been like? Your swan song was a little bit different than what you were predicting. Well,
I think I've done about 32 years in public health. The last 2 years, there's been more in the last 2 years than were in the previous 30. I'll tell you that. It had to be done. It was but it was something else, and I think absolutely nothing would have prepared me for it. Nothing. We had a couple of trial runs and things like that, but nothing would have prepared me for number one, the intensity, and number two, the duration. Because if you had said to me, there'll be a global pandemic that will last for at least 2 years, I said, no, they're usually over in 6 months or whatever, and we'll be battered and bruised, but we'll come out the other end of it. But we'll see what happens. And who knows when we'll be finished with this one now, because this morning now we're hearing about a new variant in South Africa that might be troublesome or might not, or whatever. And someone said, you picked the right time to leave, didn't you?
Well, what's that song?
I'm still going. I don't care. I'm not hanging around to see how this pops out. But, when is it going to end?
Yeah. And, we're having this conversation at the end of 2021.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Yeah. At any time, could you have predicted that we'd still be talking about it and that it would still be a thing?
It wouldn't have surprised me, Greg. I would have hoped not, but it wouldn't have surprised me the way things were going, because this has been so unknowable, and there's been something new cropping up all the time. And just when you think you've sorted it out, something else comes to put a spanner in the works, and it's almost, what do you do?
Yeah. Could you tell the story of it from an Irish context? Back to the beginning of 2020.
Well, what do you mean the Irish context?
I suppose in a way we're back to that conversation that we had initially. Do you remember when we were hearing these scenes from Italy, and it was like bizarre, where they were making choices about who they could treat and who they couldn't treat.
Yeah.
And we were arguing about whether we should wear masks or not. There was no testing. And it was as basic as anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was no vaccine.
Yeah.
And that's what's made the difference. It really has. Because the projections and predictions about mortality, definitely, there are lots of people walking around today that would have died of COVID if it hadn't been for the vaccination. And whatever way you slice it, that's big. Lots and lots of cases still, unfortunately, we'll get into that. But the likelihood, people who have been double jabbed and boosted, as I have, the likelihood of people like that getting COVID, or if they get it, having serious consequences, is way down. It's still there, still a risk, which is why we have to worry about the variants coming up, things like that. But it has changed in that respect. They're still things happening and still going,
Yeah.
craziness going on. I mean, I don't know if you followed the news in Northern Ireland. This is in the public domain, so I can say about it without naming names, because we don't do that. But there was a teen disco in a certain establishment in the middle of Northern Ireland a couple of weeks around Halloween. And how it went ahead is anyone's guess, but you had loads of youngsters. They were all under 15s, because I know it was a place where John used to go when he was that age, and he wouldn't be seen dead after he turned 15. But it's the type of, anyway, there were thousands of kids packed into the place. And obviously no social distancing, no masks, everyone shouting. That age group, largely unvaccinated. We had about 200 cases of COVID as a result of that single event. About 800 plus contacts, many of whom went on to develop COVID, because there was a big hinterland of people traveling to this place from all areas. About 20 schools were affected because they were going back to school and obviously bringing it back with them. So it just shows it's still there and still causing havoc and causing problems, and will continue to do so. It's just depressing when you think about it, but there's a lot of work to be done still, and it'll be with us for some time to come, unfortunately.
And the whole argument about people being vaccinated or not vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get a vaccination, you're obviously putting yourself at risk.
Yeah.
But is everyone a carrier, vaccinated or not vaccinated?
You can be carrying it. You're less likely to be carrying it if you're vaccinated, but you can. And yes, you're not less likely to be affected yourself. But then again, you think about it, lots of cases of COVID are asymptomatic, and people could have had it. If they haven't been tested, they won't even know about it. So, but they can still carry it and transmit it. So, yeah, vaccination isn't 100% effective.
Yeah.
No vaccination is 100% effective. So people who are fully vaccinated could still get it and could still die from it. You know, it's less likely. This is what, we're talking about public health and what we do. It's probability.
Yeah, it's a game of numbers,
and it's about risk of populations. When we're talking about individuals, it's a different matter.
Yeah, because something that's been concerning me recently, that now that you're still in the hot seat and I can talk to you about it, is that, one, if you're unvaccinated, you're at risk yourself personally, but there's a higher chance that you're going to pass it on. So when you take those two things into account, anyone who doesn't get a vaccination is really being a little bit reckless. And there's a million reasons why people don't want to do it and all that kind of thing, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually surprised that when people get angry about lockdowns and everything, like you look at Rotterdam, and we're blaming the country, we're blaming the government.
Yeah.
It'll be the same here. If we go into lockdown, it's Stephen Donnelly's fault and it's Neffet's fault and whoever else.
Yeah.
And the vintners will be giving out, the hoteliers will be giving out, business will be giving out, and we'll all be giving out about the government, and even the entertainment industry will be giving out, all the bands and everything. I'm actually surprised that there isn't a bigger voice by these industries, and maybe we've all got a bit too PC at this stage.
Yeah.
But to say, no, my brother, my sister, my colleague, you need to get vaccinated because you're screwing this up for everyone. I'm surprised that the volume around that conversation isn't louder. It seems to be, well, jeekers, if Gerry Waldron doesn't want to get a vaccine, that's his right, and you can't say anything because your head will be taken off you if you do. And I'm actually astounded, and looking at the messaging now, because it still seems to be very serious. In the South, there's huge numbers of cases. They're asking us all to, socialize half the time, et cetera, be very careful while everything is still open. But I'm not hearing that vaccination story. It's as if, well, the information is out there. You have it or you don't, but we're not going to push that anymore. Like, it's a bit ridiculous. You can't get into a restaurant now without your vaccine passport when you shouldn't be able to, and ID. But yet the employees in the restaurant may not be vaccinated, and the employers can't ask them, even though they've got a duty to keep all of their team safe.
Yeah.
And I know in Italy, wasn't there was a bit of mandating of workers going on. What's your position on that? Do you think, is it time to stop pussyfooting around and maybe put the boot in a little bit?
I suppose it's a question of what you can do and what kind of a society we want. And it's a wider question that, you're quite right. And I believe very, very strongly people have an obligation to get vaccinated. There are very few people for whom it's contraindicated. And of course, they shouldn't be vaccinated. There'll always be some people, but that will be on medical advice and not kind of any spurious reasons that people are thinking of.
But they'll be safer as well, Gerard, won't they? If anyone who can be vaccinated is. Yeah. That's
right. I mean, that's that much derided term, herd immunity.
Yeah.
And it means that if most people in the population are vaccinated, because those who can't will be protected by the fact that so many people have been, and that's the way it does, with most childhood diseases like measles and mumps and things like that. And that's why when there's a good level of protection in the population, you won't get outbreaks of those diseases. But I just struggle in terms of saying when you talk about compulsory vaccination, what that actually means. And are you going to say, number one, as people have said, you can't work in the health service unless, or in social care and caring for in care homes if you haven't been vaccinated, right? You think that sounds very sensible, and everybody, without a shadow of a doubt, everybody in those areas should be vaccinated. Now, what happens if people who choose not to be are excluded from work? And you might say that's legislation's required and it goes out, and maybe that will encourage people to get it that wouldn't otherwise have got it, but there'll be some people that will be so stubborn that they won't. And then you have things happening, like, for instance, you have people in care homes who there won't be enough people to staff the care homes, and people will suffer. Vulnerable people in the care homes will suffer because of that. It's a terrible, terrible dilemma. The information is out there for everybody who wants it. It's almost become stale, and I'm tired of telling people get vaccinated in the same way as I'm tired of telling people about face coverings, social distancing, hand washing. But they're still the messages. And get vaccinated and ventilate your spaces. But it's not new, so it's not news. So how often you can keep flogging the message, whereas I don't. But compulsion, what do we do to say we're not going to, and I hope as a society we're never going to get to the stage where the state will round up people and forcibly jab them. And that happens in some societies, but I think that isn't the kind of society that I want to live in.
Oh, totally.
And we have to allow people.
We
have to allow people the right to be damn stupid at times.
Yeah, but at the same time, But at the same time, if you run a red light, the cop will pull you in because it's a danger, and you should get your points because you were causing a risk to people. If I have a pub and I'm a bit careless about cleaning up spillages on the floor, and I end up doing a somersault and hurting my back, and there's a case there because I was careless.
There is, yes.
But yet then, if you're an employer,
and that's the kind of debate that has to be had, Greg, at a society, at general level of society, and saying what are we prepared to do. I mean, and there are extreme cases like that, and you can go back to, I think it's the end of the 19th century. And there was this lady called Typhoid Mary. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
She sounds like a great woman to go to a party with.
Yes, but she was typhoid. She was a typhoid carrier. Hadn't any symptoms, and everything would have been fine except that she was a very good cook, and she was inclined to cook meals, and she got a job as cook all over the place, and she spread typhoid like the plague. And the only thing that could be done with her at the end of the day, because she wouldn't agree to stop taking on cooking jobs was that she had to be incarcerated. And that was in the States at a particular time, and it was a line that was taken to protect the health of the population. But are we heading in that direction? I don't know. Do we want that kind of society where that can happen to individuals? I don't know.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, we're telling individuals, if you have symptoms, you need to stay at home for 14 days.
Yeah.
Is that nearly the same thing?
It is, but it's probably not the same thing when we've got vaccination and things like that. But yeah, if we, what do we do? How do we deal with it? We're not, I suppose, you look at the analogy as well. What we've been going through is like what people went through when there was a war on.
Yeah.
We're not in peacetime. We haven't been in peacetime since the beginning of 2020. There's a war on, and in wartime, things are done differently. You kind of you kept the curtains closed and didn't let any light go out in case a bomb dropped in your house. And it's not a million miles away from that situation, except that the enemy is this nasty little virus that's caused havoc in our lives for all this time.
And if I go back to the beginning of your career, and you're in medical school, and you're given this theoretical situation, this little dilemma that a bunch of people have this virus and it'll spread if they're within 2 meters of each other. How do you solve it? I remember that exercise, and that exact situation was handed to us, and we made a bit of a balls of it in all truth. But we've made a balls of it collectively, globally, haven't we? Yeah. But between one thing and the other. Okay. I'm not going to keep you much longer. Can you tell me what you said to your team in your speech?
Well, I went through that about how I got here by accident. And, I have always had absolutely wonderful colleagues, and I've had the best bunch of them in the last couple of years. And I was looking at them and thinking, how in the name of God have you managed to get through what you got through? I wouldn't have been able to get through it without them. They're just an amazing bunch of people, and they deserve every credit. They won't get much, I can tell you that. They'll be blamed as when it comes round. That's what happened. Someone said, who said it was it there's only 6 inches between a pat in the back and the kick in the arse.
That's the truth.
But I've been very privileged to work with people like that, and I certainly, anything I've achieved, and that's the thing about public health as well. It's not an individual's game; it's a team game, and you need teams, and you work with teams, not just the people you're working with in work, but people outside. Whether they're out in the community, whether they're members of the public, voluntary organisations, whatever. You got to work with them. You got to work with councils, politicians, even whatever. And you really got to work together with everybody to achieve things. And that's how we do. That's how we do what we do. That's why any success we have is down to good team working, I think.
What will you miss most about work?
I suppose I miss the people, really, and that's it. I'm not so sure I miss the work, Greg, tell you the truth, because it's been just so relentless. And I'm going to be absolutely, I'm relieved not to have to wake up in the morning anymore and think, what kind of disaster is coming my way today? And I think any individual can only do that for so long. And I think I've done it for as long as I can. If I do anything else again, if I come back into it again, and I probably will, it'll be on my own terms, and it'll be for shorter periods of time or whatever. But that's what I won't miss. But I will miss I'll miss the people. I'll miss the conversations we've had, the good times we've had despite all of that. The way we've been able to sometimes laugh at what's going on and try and get through it with the best humor we possibly can. And despite the really serious nature of this, you have to be able to pick yourself up and look on the bright side. Just be optimistic about that. It will someday be over, and we'll get out the other side of it, and we'll survive it, and we will.
Have you a plan?
A plan for what?
Yeah, for post today.
Oh yeah.
Have you a retirement plan?
I'm going to have an active retirement. I'm not going to sit in my backside watching daytime soaps. I can tell you that. I have things to do, some of which are related to public health. I've been very keen on teaching, and I'm keeping up my work in examining for the membership of the faculty. So that'll be ongoing. And there are a couple of other things. I'll be writing plays. I'll be doing all sorts of stuff. So I won't be idle. I made a list about a month back and said, well, what am I going to be doing for, and there are about 20 things on that list. And I'll be going back to that list and looking at it and saying, yes, I'm going to do this, and this at such and such a time. So my days are going to be are going to be full, and I have no shortage of things to do.
Will we all be getting presents of pottery for Christmas?
No, it won't be pottery. If you'll be lucky, you'll be getting a nice bottle of wine, Greg. And it will be a nice one, I promise.
So, you're on the Win Happy podcast and wrapping your head around how work ends up defining us. Because I know myself, it nearly is who you are, and it occupies, and your non-work time is nearly recuperation. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's a scary thought, just trying to reinvent what that looks like if I was to stop what I was doing today and take it up again. Just to kind of to summarize that, and I know for a lot of people, they kind of see it as being very negative once you hit that number, that 65 number, and time is coming to an end, and who you are. Do you want to just sign off with a thought around that topic?
Yeah, I mean, 60, 65 or 66 as I am now is not the end of life. And I was saying to someone today, when I turned 60, I found that the most liberating experience of my life, because it meant that I could do what I wanted to do. There was nothing constraining me. If I felt fed up of work, I could leave at any time, with no adverse consequences to myself. And strangely enough, that's what kept me working for the past 6 years. The fact that I didn't have to be there. So that's one thing. And then in a way, and you shouldn't think of, I think you said, yes, what you do defines you, your work defines you, but it shouldn't altogether define you. I've always kept outside interests. I've kind of bored people by my sort of knowledge of trivia and useless information, and what I know about wine, what I know about quizzes, what I know about playwriting and things like that. You've got to have things other than work to keep you active, because I would worry an awful lot if I was defined by what I did in the day job. And I have deliberately not confined myself to that as part of my identity. And I think, thankfully, I can move on from it. I don't think I'm going to miss it from that point of view. I won't be banging on the door looking to be let back in and hanging around the offices, sort of saying, do you remember me? I won't be doing that.
Yeah, because it is a big adjustment.
I feel fulfilled in terms of the career I've had, but I hope to have a very fulfilling life from here on in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to look at it.
Yeah, because it is a big adjustment for a lot of people, isn't it? That it leaves a big hole in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Gerry, the very, very best of luck.
Thanks, Greg.
And I'm delighted you gave me some of your last work day. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's good to have the chance to. I mean, you've taken me some places I didn't expect to be taken. But.
Yeah, and I'm delighted to be talking to the CEO and founder of Waldron Pottery. Gerry, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.